Miss Parker, we have these wonderful pieces of DNA art. Wow, but we think one might be a copy. Can you help us?
I sure can. Let's see here. I have bad news. Half of each of these is the original. DNA replication is how DNA copies itself. And we call it replication because a replica is an exact copy of something. If we think way back to the cell cycle, this happens during S phase, okay? So that when the cell divides during M phase, or mitosis, each daughter cell can get a full set of DNA. Step one. Step one of DNA replication, or DNA copying itself, is that the two strands of DNA have to get separated. And an enzyme called helicase does this. So if you're writing down your notes, you could write down an enzyme called helicase separates the two strands of DNA. Okay? So we break the hydrogen bonds that are on the middle of the two strands there. Step two. All right, step two is that an enzyme called DNA polymerase adds nucleotides to pair with these original strands. So it follows the base pairing rules, A and T, G and C, to add nucleotides to these original strands. So we can see here, this was step one, helicase is unwinding it. And we have these two, we call these original strands template strands because they serve as the template for these new, the red strands, to be built. But this new molecule of DNA is going to be the same as the old one because it follows those same base pairing rules. Step three! So step three is that two identical DNA molecules are made. So when DNA replication happens, we start with one DNA molecule, we end up with two exact copies of it. So they're the same. Now, this is called semi-conservative because one original strand is kept, or we could say conserved. That's why it's called semi-conservative in the new strands. Okay, so we have here the blue in this represents our original strands or template strands. And then the red represents our new strands that were made by DNA polymerase. Okay? But these two DNA molecules that are made, they're identical. They're exact copies of each other. So let's bring it all together. This key is like helicase, unwinding the two strands of DNA. Then these little black and orange doodads on there, those are DNA polymerase, and they're coming in, they're using the base pairing rules, and they're adding new nucleotides to these strands that have been opened. But if we look at these two DNA molecules, they're identical. AT, AT, TA, TA, GC, GC. They're exact copies of each other. So now that we've reached the end, they're the same.